Howdy everybody, this is Hope for the Best, and in this video I'm going to show you how I kit bashed these 15mm little Warden guys. Now I'd seen a lot of comments when I posted these guys a couple weeks ago, and so I thought it'd be cool to show you guys how I made them. So the first thing that you guys are going to need if you want to follow along exactly is you're going to need some 15mm Fallschirmjägers from Flames of War, and then you're also going to need these 3D printed 15mm Warden helmets, and I'll make the files available for this in the description. But yeah, if you have any questions, let's get started. So the first thing to do is we're going to use our hobby knife and make this Fallschirmjäger a little less Fallschirmjäger-y. So we're going to remove some of the details on his coat to make it look less like a German World War II uniform and more like a Warden's trench coat. So very carefully, just removing plastic details that I don't want, making sure not to slice my fingers when I am removing plastic. If you're having some trouble with it, I've found that a way to not destroy details that you want to keep is to score a little line in the plastic. This way, when you're cutting away, you will cut to your score line, and then that'll stop you from destroying anything like his gear that you see I'm very carefully cutting around right now. While I've got the blade out, I'll also take care of any of the mold lines that come on any plastic model. And then it's time to remove his Fallschirmjäger helmet and replace it with a Warden helmet. So using my snippers, I'm going to place them just above the brim of the helmet, and then very carefully snip away the top of the helmet. And then with those same nippers, I'm going to snip away at the brim, just because it's going to be annoying to try to do that with a hobby knife or to try to file it away. Eventually leaving us with just a head, and as opposed to a head wearing a helmet. Speaking of that hobby knife, I'm then going to smooth out the top of the helmet, making sure that it's actually a smooth surface to go with the bottom of our smooth 3D printed part. So I will then grab my Warden helmet here, very carefully snipping it away, not losing it to the carpet. And I'm going to test fit it on top of the head, making sure. I don't really like this fit, so I'm going to remove a little bit more material using my hobby knife. Same technique, very carefully sliding it along, making sure not to remove bits of my finger as well. And with that one, that fits a lot better. So I'm going to use a little bit of gel super glue on the top of his little head to affix his little helmet. So very carefully placing it on top of his head. Making a couple adjustments, and then it's good to go. So yeah, I think that fits, and I think we have successfully replaced the helmets. So with that fully done, it has all the conversions that you're going to make this Fallschirmjäger or Warden soldier done. And I'm just going to put them on this base here. This is a little laser cut base that I made myself. You can use any sort of wargaming base that you want, if you want them on a base at all anyway. So dab with the same super glue, place him on, making sure he faces the edge that I want him to face. And then that's the completed model with no painting. But I figure you guys want to see how I painted it as well, so we'll get into that in a moment. So here he is once the primer has fully dried, and as you can see the primer has unified all of our little bits to make him look like one complete model. So these are the paints you're going to want if you want to follow exactly along with me, although as I said with the vehicles you don't really have to, just so long as the colors are about the same. But these are the colors that I use for his jacket if you want him to be uniform with all their uniforms. So using the Fang, I'm going to base coat his jacket, making sure it's completely blue, and making sure that I don't miss any of the little bits that are way in the crevices, because those will stand out once we get moving. And then the next paint up is Dryad Bark. I'm going to use this to paint his pants. And then once his pants are dry, I'm going to grab some Doombull Brown. And this paint I'm going to use for all of his equipment, making sure that I'm very carefully not going too much over our first couple layers. Although this early in the model, it's not too bad to go back and make any corrections. So in addition to any leather bits of his gear, I'm also going to use this paint to paint the wood of his rifle, taking this Kar 98 and turning it into a number 2 Loudcaster by virtue of paint color alone. So with those 3 colors dry, next is the Steel Legion Drab. I'm going to use this to paint his sling or any other bits that don't fit with the Doombull Brown. So, for example, his German water bottle. Next is Mechanicus Standard Gray. This is for any of the dark metal bits, for example, the metal on his weapon, or his little bit on the gear. I'm not exactly sure what this is on the original German model, but figured I'd paint it gray to make it look a little different. So there's that all done. Next color is Rhinox Hide. This is to make sure his boots stand out a little bit from his pants, even if they are both shades of brown. And then Kislev Flesh. I'm going to use this to paint in his hands and face, being very careful not to go over any detail before, but also making sure all the little bits are done. Kislev Flesh is kind of a thin paint though, so I usually go over it with 2 thin coats, even on these teeny little models. And then there's one last detail, which is his shiny metal helmet, which we're going to use Citadel Lead Belcher for. So making sure that this helmet is nice and shiny so that any colonial snipers can see it from a mile away. So that's the model done with all the base colors. You guys can leave it there if you want, but I'm going to drown everything in a layer of Battle Mud Wash. This is going to unify all of the different paint colors and make it look like one model again. So with the wash dry, as you can see, he's come together, but it's time to bring some of that color back. Using Rust Gray, I'm going to paint the uniform and brighten it up so that he doesn't disappear into any table that you're using. And then with this color, I'm going to make sure I obliterate any detail that I didn't particularly get with a knife. So you can see me very carefully making sure that any detail on this pocket doesn't exist anymore. And then back to the paints we used before, so Dryad Bark for the pants, just brightening them up just a little bit. Kislev Flesh for his skin, making sure to pick out each of his little fingies. And then when I'm painting his face, I'm only hitting the parts that are going to catch a lot of sun, so his cheekbones. And that's that with that. And then his little helmet, making sure it's nice and shiny, as I said, making sure the Colonial Sniper job is as easy as possible. So that's all the painting of the actual miniature done, although I'm pretty sure you guys want to see how I do bases as well, so I'll just go over that real quick. So using some Elmer's School Glue, or any PVA, and some sand, I'm going to put a dollop of glue on the base, carefully spread it out using a spreader tool, making sure not to get it over his boots. And then once that base is completely covered in glue, into the cup of sand he goes, giving a little swirl, and then knocking off any of the extra sand, making sure that it doesn't bunch up too much. Now we just have to wait for all that glue to dry, which will take a little bit.
Oh, there's like a set of colonials on the other side of this hill! Here they come! Die, colonials! I gotta reload! Keep your heads, most of them are dead! Keep it up! One more! Get him! Got him! You got him!
So once that's all done, and the glue is all dried, now it's time to add some paint. So I just used paint that I got from the craft store, which is golden brown and antique white, I want to say. Although it doesn't really matter, you're going to want to base this whatever color you want. Just making sure that the paint gets into the texture as not sitting on top of it, and then a dry brush with the lighter shade, bringing out some more of the detail. And I'm going to grab my Woodland Scenics Blended Turf, which I use for grass. So a little bit more glue, a little bit more spreading out of the glue, and then into the strange tub of green powder he goes. Once I've shaken off all the excess, he'll look like this, and then I'm going to neaten up the sides of the base with Steel Eden Drab, just to make it look like I actually tried. And with that, that is a fully painted little 15mm Warden, ready to join all his friends in defense of the relic base. I used the same technique with these Warden LUV crews, by the way. I did receive some comments about that, asking me how to do it. So if you just get miniatures that look like vehicle crew, you can do the exact same thing. But yeah, thanks for sticking with me, and eventually I'll get around to sculpting my own minis, but as you can see, that's a little ways away. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.